In the next panel, discover why anger, especially for boys, isn't the enemy, but something worth channeling, and how a fighter game mechanic taught kids to do just that. Please welcome Todd Shaiman, Erica Milsom, Tehya Kopp, and Rachel Katz for today's talk, Rage Fighters, building a Roblox game that teaches kids to channel their anger. You guys are all sitting in the right one.
It's amazing. Thanks so much. Hey, everyone. I'm Todd. It's great to see y'all. I am the co-founder and president of Ryzo Studios and have background in film, animation at Pixar and Disney, and VR and AR stuff at Google. And I'm so excited to get to talk with you all about the making of this game and what we've learned across the way. What we're going to do is I'm going to quickly introduce everyone so that we can get into the meat and potatoes of this. And then, yeah, we'll get going. And we'll leave some time at the end for some questions, too. So first, I wanted to note that Calvin Gray, who is our developer for this game, who's the executive director of Bad Ape, and based in Malta, was supposed to come and was unable to come. So we miss you, Calvin. But he was essential to the kind of whole experience of this. And we'll talk about the relationships that we built working on this game with Calvin throughout. I want to introduce first, all the way on the side, Rachel Katz, who's the program officer at our amazing partner, Equimundo. Rachel brings a passion for health equity and supports program design for youth and adults using evidence-based solutions for transforming harmful gender norms. She, in the past, has been a Peace Corps volunteer in Peru, working on sexual and reproductive health and girls' empowerment, and has received a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins, and spends her free time biking around DC and trying new foods. All right, and then next to Rachel is Tehya. Tehya Kopp is Chief Impact Officer for Ryzo Studios, in which the role she plays is bringing all of our sort of impact insights into all of our programming and films and games. She brings marketing strategy and operations leadership from global entertainment companies, including 20 plus years at Warner Brothers, where she led large-scale transformations and managed global operations across 18 countries. Tehya is also an ICF certified executive coach, specializing in partnering with changemakers to turn vision into meaningful results. And then finally, directly to my side is Erica Milsom, Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of Ryzo Studios. Erica is writer, director, and creative executive with 20 years of experience at Pixar. Erica directed the animated film Loop, which featured Pixar's first non-verbal autistic lead, and pioneered the studio's unscripted strategy over those years. Now as CCO, Erica leads impact franchises, bridging animation and play, and is the force behind Rage Fighters, the Roblox game we're going to talk about, and its accompanying film, Release the Beast. Both are aimed at giving boys permission to feel. Erica is also a Rockefeller Bellagio Fellow, and she creates stories that drive social change across film and interactive media. So welcome, everyone. Yeah. So now what we're going to quickly do is do a quick introduction of the history of Ryzo and how Ryzo came about that Erica's going to do. And then we're going to do a similar thing where Rachel's going to talk about Equimundo.
Hi guys, and I had to isn't it weird when you run a company and you've done it for 4 years and I'm like, I have to rewrite my description what we are. But actually, I think it's kind of interesting. One of the reasons I needed to rewrite it is how integrated gaming has become in our strategy. Todd and I co-founded Ryzo after a long collaboration at we worked at Pixar together, but we collaborated on independent projects together. And when we would talk about our experience there, we always loved that studio so deeply, saw the power of the themes and the storytelling, and specifically the animated medium for audiences. But we also saw what was left on the table, which was kind of the impact capacity to chase those themes, those characters, and that passion into people's lives and help them to take action on the things that they fell in love with in the films. For instance, Inside Out, just, like kind of a mental health campaign related to it. Be great. But so when we were talking about this, we were like, well, what if we started a studio that's based on the same philosophies of Pixar, which is heart, it's kind of like, it's your heart, it's your head, it's your whatever spiritual imagination. Those things are combined to tell a great story. It's no single element. But also we both have a little bit of a background in documentary, and we just knew about impact campaigns, and we were like, what if we conceptualize these things together? So that's the beginning of Ryzo. And then I would say since that, chasing activation in our current form, what we are is this tiny studio telling stories. Our first franchise is about boys in anger. We really dived into gaming, and I don't know, are any of you guys game designers? Do you get to watch people play your games? Like, okay, when I watch people watch my movies, there's always like the first laugh, you're like, oh, thank God. Like there's sort of this moment where they engage and you're like, oh, they're with me, okay. When you watch kids play a frickin' game, you're like, whoa, this is just like a payload of creative payback on everything you did. And so it really, I think it's electrifying as a creator, but it's also really opens your eyes as to what it means to be a part of the story, to be actively engaged with it, and how powerful gaming is. So that's where we're at right now, is we call ourselves an animation and activation studio, and we're sort of redesigning. We just finished our prototype stuff, which we will not show you a video about, but we'll have you to send us an email, we'll send you a video. It's not gonna play here today. But we finished our prototype, and we really have adapted our strategy based on the power of gaming to say, like, we need to reconceptualize how we develop all of our stories. So there's a sort of encapsulating gaming in the early story stage to make sure that everything flows together and you're taking advantage of all the opportunities. So, yeah, and now and one other thing is that we did want to take on the big questions of our time and not really. We were like, well, we're little, we don't have $200 million we have to make back to be $1 billion as a large studio, so let's take on hard questions. Let's take on the tip into online extremism, the rise of rage. Let's take on climate anxiety and the sense of disempowerment that people feel and fear, and let's take on the grief. Let's take on the hard stuff, but let's take it on with a sense of like passion and imagination. So that's what Ryzo is.
All right, thank you. And now, Rachel, do you want to say something about amazing Equimundo?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'll say a brief bit. Equimundo is, our full name is Center for Masculinities and Social Justice. So we're not born in the gaming space, but we've come to it in the past couple years. And we focus on gender equality and violence prevention, but from engaging boys and men. To be allies to women and girls and people of all genders, but also for themselves. What do they have to gain from transformed gender norms for their own health and connection and well-being? And Equimundo does research and programs and advocacy globally, and we're more and more immersing in the digital space where we know so much of us spend so much time, especially young boys and men. And so we've been lucky to partner with Ryzo and are excited to share some of what we learned.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, so now let's jump in. So I'm gonna go back to you, Erica. So kind of tell the origin story of how Rage Fighters came to be and the franchise, kind of where did it come from?
When we were sorting out like what we wanted our first project to be, I think there were 2 points that helped us come to this. Rage Fighters and its Release the Beast is the name of the short film that's related to this. And one of them was just the idea of like, what is most pressing on our consciousness right now? And really like online extremism, the state of boys. Like this was before all the studies came out. I just was looking at my parent friends, I was looking at my nephew, I was looking at my husband. I was looking at people in my life and seeing like as men, like sort of what the culture was creating for them. And I was like, wow, this is a hard space to be in if you're a person who wants to be a whole human. So we knew that taking on like boys mattered that way. And personally, I had, I think, actually, we started there, and then I really thought back in my life and realized, like, my brother, when I was a teenager, actually, we were, like, we were a liberal family in rural Colorado, and my brother became a white supremacist in high school, and it was really terrifying, and I didn't know what to do about it, so I yelled at him all the time. And then I left for college, and I just was sort of like, well, I'll write that guy off because he's not who I love anymore. And then he went to college, and then he started writing me letters that were signed with peace signs and flowers and all these kind of things. And then being the great Midwesterners that we did not talk about it again for 35 years. And when we did, I was like, Ryan, I'm doing this film, like, what happened in that time? And he talked so much about the fact that he was terrified that someone would kill him. He was terrified someone would kill our parents. He didn't believe that stuff, but he didn't know how to take it on in any formal way, for sure. And in an emotional way, the only way he could respond was through being the craziest, most angry kid. He was a little guy, too. Like, just letting his anger step in front of his fear allowed him to stay alive and what he perceived of everyone else's life. And it just sort of, and he's like, and you're the only one who knew, Erica. My parents didn't know. And then I've talked to my parents, they were like, what? I'm like, oh my God. And I feel like when we started talking about this whole franchise for Boys in Extremism, I really tapped into that thing of like, there might be some world where you're the only person who knows what's going on with another kid in your life. And if you have some tools and you have some avenues that help you open up a conversation and give you some sense of like how to help people through rather than be mad at them for being where they're at, that would be great. So we wrote a feature film called Decimator, which is a much larger kind of long form animated film, but then Todd and I were like, we better figure out how to make a film without Pixar. So we made our first short film, which is Release the Beast, and it's about anger, really trying to narrow the focus down to like what is kind of a core place there and what is underneath anger. And then from that, to activate it, I think we should talk about the game separately because there's just so many stages to making that game, but we were like, we want to make a game that helps you process anger, helps you deal with anger, helps you both like use it when you need it to help you through life, but also move through it when you need to move on. Yeah?
Cool, amazing. All right. How about, so let's move to you, Tehya, and let's talk about kind of like from Release the Beast, so the film is sort of like the first thing we did. How do you translate that type of story into a game with impact? And like what are the types of things that you started to think about and sort of surface as we were thinking about the sort of transition?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, the interesting thing is that the game, the game is a Roblox game, did we say that? I'm not even sure if we said that. The game was started as an impact activation. So going back to the concept that Erica was talking about, saying, okay, hey, what if we had like a Pixar style film, but then we also had, an impact campaign a la what you might do with a documentary film, right? But that also, hey, what if it wasn't like tacked on? What if it was integrated throughout? And what if that impact was in the story and in the way in which you engaged with the whole story world? And what does that even mean? What are we even saying? We're like, I don't know, but we don't want it to be like here's the vegetable part. Like here's the stuff that's good, and then here's the broccoli, right? So how do you work through that? So and how do you also, by the way, as a startup with limited/no funding, how are you going to do any of this in an authentic way and measure it, right? So how are we going to be able to do the kind of study and capture the effects of this such that we can prove that this works? So we had to kind of think very strategically about what could do that. And the game concept was super interesting because we realized that we could build some measurement into the game. Just sheerly by progressing in the game, you could demonstrate your ability to use these emotional regulation skills that you had to use in order to become a better fighter in the game. That's what the game is. By doing that, we realized that, oh, wait a minute, this isn't like a tack on like impact activation. This is actually part of the whole story world. And that helped us down the path of really looking at this as a multi-door franchise that ideally, envisioning that we could have a fan community that could come to this world through either the game or the film or other avenues that we have ideas of but have yet to come out, and encounter the story world that way. So I would just say that it started as a little bit more of a traditional, coming from our traditional lens from the film world of a film and a campaign as separate pieces, and it evolved into an interplay between those. And I think if we looking at it through that lens going forward, I think we were just talking about it on the way over here this morning, like to the degree you can design all of this with that intention up front, I think that's a really interesting organic way to integrate these elements.
Can I add something that I just realized you guys didn't see the video, so you might not know what this game is at all. Sorry, because the video won't play. So the game, basically, you jump into a world that is ostensibly designed by Aaron, who is the main character of the short film. And he's like, look, you're jumping into a world that is my inner life. This is like the enemies are my inner enemies. Yeah, very inspired by Inside Out, y'all. Very inspired by Inside Out. But, my inner enemies are the enemies you fight. The skills that you use and kind of skill up on and they help you fight the enemies are breathe, pause, and chill. And those things are all kind of things that you can use in anger management and in emotional regulation, and you practice it over and over again. And the lore essentially breaks down. The lore is this sort of like written in a young person's hand, the sense of like, well, what do these inner battles mean to me? What do these skills mean to me? How do I use them in the game? So like, what's the use of it to go after an actual game enemy? But also, how do I use it IRL? And there's a lot of journal, like hand-drawn sketchbook journal types art in there. So that's essential. And 3 worlds, or it's a open world, but is it open world? I'm sorry. You have to unlock things. You have to rebirth to go into the next. I'm sorry, it's not open world. Is it open world? I don't know. I'm not a gamer. I just learned Roblox to make this, which was fun and weird and awesome.
All right, thanks for that context. And so I think let's pause and zoom out a little bit. And Rachel, it'd be really interesting to hear from you. What does the research say about gender-specific challenges for boys in the gaming spaces and how boys are navigating it?
Thanks, Todd. So our role has been to explore some of those narratives on boys in the games and in the community around gaming. And so Equimundo did a research study with the Gina Davis Institute to explore this, both a survey with boys and young men on their experiences and through content analysis of Twitch streaming and the characters displayed. So the report is called The Double-Edged Sword of Gaming, and we found sort of a shield and a sword in how boys navigate identity, relationships, and masculinity in these spaces. And so the shield, the positive, is that these spaces offer a rare emotional refuge in a world where boys are often encouraged to suppress vulnerabilities and a range of emotion and connection. So for example, the study found that 1 in 3 boys surveyed, ages 10 to 15, felt that gaming makes them feel less lonely. And also, 2 in 3 of the older boys, 16 to 26, felt they're more like their true selves in gaming spaces than in real life. That was 2 in 3 of that older cohort. So these games can be an emotional lifeline for boys to connect. On the flip side, the sword was that the game content and the communities can also reinforce these harmful, rigid, masculine norms. For example, 82% of the characters across 27,000 characters analyzed in the streaming, 82% of those male characters exhibit traits in Equimundo's man box, which is a framework to understand harmful, rigid masculine norms. such as emotional suppression and aggression and extreme dominance. And this is displayed through male characters much more frequently carrying weapons, enacting violence, and rarely showing vulnerability. So we see these two sides, and boys are immersed in these environments, but not always victims to this. We see many of them pushing back in these spaces, still showing care and finding community and making connections. And so our challenge, and through the work with you all, is to support that and amplify that and give them space in the games to show care and build empathy and connection to make it better for them.
Amazing, thank you. All right, so now let's go back to Rage Fighters. So, Erica, talk through kind of like, what was the initial version of the game? How did it go? And how were we able to navigate those challenges?
And you can pop in too, Tehya. So I think the original version of the game, we had the film, we had the assets, we had a development team initially who were very focused on like education and had done a ton of educational stuff, so it seemed great. And we started sort of trying to figure out like, alongside, one of the tools that we use is called a jam session for making the films for the studio. We bring together artists, clinicians, technologists, and ourselves, and we talk about the story we're trying to tell and the topics we want to cover, and then we really just jam. And it's a lot of information. Like a lot of times we're trying to find this intersection in interest and passion and just what is driving the story. And I think when we started to do this with a team that was very righty, they liked to write a real long GDD, it started getting like long, and then you would read it and it was like 45 pages long, or maybe it wasn't that long. Felt like it when I was reading it. And it just didn't have a ton of like game loop or gameplay in it. And it looked like the film, but it didn't feel like a game. And I think that was like for all, part of that was like we were trying to figure out what is playable about our story. And I think all of us were a little unsure about that. And then we'll just say that relationship kind of fell apart because it was like, wow, and took half our budget with it. And I think Tehya dropped some really thoughtful help at that stage. So I'd like you to talk about what you did.
So this first iteration of the game with the original developer, it was very, I'm going to say, very theoretical. And so we were really working towards the impact that we were trying to make. And so it was kind of all there on paper, and it looked similar to the film, like Erica was saying, but it was not gelling from a gaming standpoint. And so we're like, okay, well, if people aren't going to, if this isn't going to be sticky and compelling and people aren't going to play it, then the whole point is, forget it. So one of the things that we were struggling with was looking at this world, of how do we deal with what we were calling healthy masculinity in a gaming environment, and how do we deal with anger? And there's so many things there that you want to do and so many buttons that you want to push. What do you focus on? How can we possibly do this? And we realized that we just had too much in the design. There was just too many solutions that we were trying to help people provide. And so what we did in the end was we just pared it way down, and we got ourselves to the core of like, okay, right, what are the top 3 skills? Instead of having a skill tree where there were 20 different nodes that you had to get, and we're like, okay, let's get 3 skills, and you can progress and repeat and continue to refine those 3 skills. So those 3 skills are pause, chill, and now breathe. Yeah, exactly. We're always filling each other in. Pause, chill, breathe, and then also connect is like a mega one that's happening throughout the whole game. But if we could take those 3, pause, breathe, and chill, and that you progress in them, and your understanding of them as a player gets deeper, and then you could come away with that as a more solid takeaway, that felt more like a win, especially for something like Roblox, which is not a complex environment, right? It's like it wasn't the heavier game design that we maybe had envisioned. So anyway, that was it. And major learning was get to the core of the impact that you're trying to do, and then just do that really well. And again, part of the function of us being new to this and not having a huge budget, that's also just a reality of where are you, who are you, what can you pull off, and do that really well and clearly, and then save the others for 2.0.
And it's funny because I will say, I think also one of the things that our second developer brought to us was he was like, well, do you want to have exposure, education, or fun? Everybody loves it. And we're like, well, we want it to be fun. And everyone, I want it to be fun, and I want everyone to love playing it. And he's like, well, then you got to really dive into what a fighting game is. And this is kind of why I ended up learning how to play Roblox as a 54-year-old person or whatever, and it was interesting because it's like, oh, okay, how is this fun? What is fun about this? And what are the norms of fighting games, and why are they so sticky and awesome? So that was a huge thing, making sure that we had this simplified goal for what we were teaching and how we were repeating those lessons, and then that we were embedding it in something that was both fun and expected for your players, that they're not just saying well, wait a minute, where am I? What is this game about?
So much so that initially we classified ourselves as a fighting game, and then we realized, wait a minute, we're kind of like an okay fighting game, but we're an awesome educational game.
if we do some updates,
if we do some, we did some learning, we realized some iteration, but so we reclassified the game and moved it over to educational, and to say yeah, this is super fun, really engaging, really enjoyable educational game, and that we're elevating that space rather than competing against the whole fighting game world.
Okay, cool. So so especially thinking about, Rachel, some of what you've said about the research around kind of particular challenges of boys in games, and the fact that this is a game trying to teach about identifying and channeling anger, but it's being done through fighting. How do you navigate, how have you thought about navigating that? How do you make a fighting game not have everyone leave more fighty and angry?
Okay, well, I think, first of all, and we didn't actually end up being so you can fight each other in the game. You're always fighting enemies in the game, but I do now really perceive fighting games where you fight each other as connection and contact and communication. I realize, you can actually execute a fighting game that is about two people coming up and dealing with something together. And I think, for me, that's an intriguing thing that I'd like to do in the future, kind of look at fighting as not just only a negative, violent, thing. That I think there are a lot of perceptions that we had to really struggle with as we went into this. But I will say, fighting your inner enemies was really helpful for us, just kind of conceptualizing the world and thinking with boys as well, boys, young gamers. We brought tons of people in who we just kind of show them a version and talk about it, have these game jams, and figure out well, what makes you happy in a game, and why is a fighting game such a joyful experience for some people? Even if you're not it's not like we have blood flying all over the place, but there is sort of a sense of conquering your inner demons, being able to move forward, receiving, it's weird, we added a sensei layer to it in the update, so you're interacting with these senseis who are characters from the film, and when you die or when you succeed, they have a little conversation with you afterwards that's just telling you what you did well in using your skills and what you've accomplished by overcoming this enemy. And I mean, I know this is in a billion games, right? But it hadn't occurred to us initially that just reinforcing what you just accomplished through this battle is a really important part of helping people learn and grok what they've done physically. So that's one part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that I think that this is an area where it was really helpful to have just to have someone in a role kind of like my role, or have people where there's a little bit of there's an additional lens that's sometimes pushing back, and because I would say multiple times, how are kids not going to come away just having done more fighting? Like, wait a minute, like, reality check, is this working? Is this working? Is this working? And like, we think it's in our heads, but like when kids play this, are they just doing a fighting game? Are they seeing the messages about like anger management and emotional regulation? Like, is that happening? And then talking with our advisors who are in the project, you know, and bringing them in, you know, just that it's so that on the creative side, you can go deep and go make it super awesome. And then the idea of the senseis bloomed out of that. And that's what really brought it all together. Because in the beginning, we were too theoretical, and then we became too fighty, and then we kind of found the right solution, the right integration of them. But it was that iteration and that letting each piece really say its full thing, and then listening, and then doing another iteration on it, that process.
Tehya, can you talk more about how, with a limited budget, limited time, how do you know if it's working? Like, how did we go about measuring things, and what did we learn through that process? And then also, I don't know, Rachel, if you have other thoughts of how you've seen that done in the world, especially with limited budgets where you're not doing like a full clinical study, and any kind of like words to the wise.
Do you want me to go first?
Why don't you go first? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just say just one point about budget. Just that this whole iteration thing, it all sounds fabulous, but like that's time, and time is cost. And so like in reality, you know, how does that all pan out? And I just want to give a plug for like, don't underestimate the amount of updates, changes, iterations you need to have. So not just technical updates, but rethinkings of like, hey, this isn't landing, you know, like, so honestly, my thought on the whole this was that like half of our budget should have been reserved for changes, iterations, not like we go live with 80% and then we have like 20% for updates, but like half or something quite serious to just really, really expect that you're gonna need to do a lot of integration and back and forth between the different players. The other point about, so how do you measure when you have a limited budget and you have a limited team? One is anecdotal, just qualitative is what I meant to say. Don't discount what you can get through play sessions, quotes that you can get, you know, have people say, or what people say. Just capture all of that, capture everything that you're doing, even if it isn't a longitudinal quantitative, you know, study, you've got something. That would be the first one. And then the other one is bake as much as you can into the gameplay, right? So that you could actually say, if I could run a report and it said that they went from skill node 1 to skill node 2, like what is it that they've demonstrated there? So that even in the gameplay, at least they can demonstrate awareness of the concept. You can't prove that they took it out into the world as a behavior change, but you could at least say there's awareness because they went from here to there and to there. So just some basics that you can, that was free. It was just in the design of the game, but enabled us to pull some data that we can at least point to as a proof of concept for future projects.
Great. Rachel?
Thanks. Yeah. You know, plus one to what you mentioned in terms of consulting the actual people you're trying to reach with the game, and not only their satisfaction, but also, you know, what they're taking out of it, and that behavior change beyond the game is hard to measure. One other way we're sort of trying to explore changes in these spaces is through working with moderators and supporting them to measure changes in community norms and support and you know, reduction of bullying and othering within those groups, and working on some dashboards, ways for moderators themselves to measure the community health of these gaming spaces. So that is sort of current work we're on, but hope to have more to share forthcoming on how to measure those small changes.
Great. Okay, cool. All right, we've got a little time left. We're going to save some time for questions, but before that, let's go down, maybe start with you, Erica. So 2 to 3, like, lessons learned, aha moments, like, what would you do differently in the future from this experience? Kind of like what jumps out at you?
my big lesson was that the kids will teach you so much. I think I knew this from the audience, but when I went out and started playtesting, I was like, holy crap. It was so fun. They were so co-creative. They were into it, but they also had like bettering ideas constantly throughout. And really that the fun of co-creating with games, I think, is pretty powerful. And that, for me, I think, I want to start on that as early as possible and have a little council of brilliant little boys and girls who can, some of them were 18, but I was like, oh, their passion and their joy, because sometimes it's kind of hard to make these kinds of games. I think it's harder than a regular one. So let that help feed your journey. For me, I was like, oh, okay, got it. Bring them in early.
Cool. All right. How about you, Tehya?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to the iteration, expect the iteration. And so in addition to budget, actually build your process, build the feedback loops. Think structurally, how am I going to get this feedback from the different groups of stakeholders that I'm working with here? And actually have a strategy for that, have a structure. And so you talk about jam sessions as one of those. There could be other methodologies, but think it through. Don't let it just be happenstance or kind of if I have time, but actually integrate that into your plan.
All right. So Rachel, how about for you, we zoom out a little. And so how would you suggest game devs can think about evolving ideas about boyhood?
Yeah, thanks. I think we're hearing some of these ideas in the other sessions here as well on, for example, there's a workshop on building empathy within the game design. And, it's coming through the design of the games, not from codes of conduct or content warnings. It's thinking of how within the world building or the character arcs or the reward systems can we make these nudges to healthier norms without telling boys, not to have angry outbursts, etc. But what are many ways to express? And so some ways we're exploring is through building open-ended character designs or having players earn XP for not just defeating others, but supporting folks they're playing with, resolving conflicts like the end of that anger that you were mentioning earlier, or leading community building missions. So through the reward systems and the gameplay mechanics, how to broaden what male characters are doing in the game and what gamers can do together.
Cool. All right. So let's do one last thing and then questions. Erica, do you want to say just briefly what's next for Ryzo, either with this world or beyond?
And actually, just so you guys know, what we did for this in the end was we ended up combining in a live event we call Untilted, the film, the game, and this art activation. And that, again, has been another teaching but super powerful way to connect with boys around this story and how it makes them feel. It was just, I have to say, it was amazing to me. We did it in, I think, 16 groups, 4 different states, ages 10 to 18. And I was constantly surprised by the engagement. There were 4 boys who kind of left early from one thing for basketball. All the rest of these kids, we had 100% participation from boys and girls, but mostly boys. And the facilitators were like, oh my God, I have never had a boy talk about their emotions ever out loud in any of these settings. And you just had an hour and a half of conversation sharing and playing. And they were also I've never seen them pay this much attention to any event that we've ever done. And I have to say, I think it's partially because it really directly applies to them. It's a creator boy as the core character, but I think it's also that it was just fun. Gaming's fun, and they were like, when do we get to the Roblox, but still I'll do this fun drawing experience. So I don't know, it was really great. And I think that really inspired us. Our next projects, we have one that's coming called The Dial, which is about climate anxiety and agency, and it's really trying, that one we are really starting to develop from a much more story world approach rather than a single narrative that leads to other things. It's really like, where's the world? Who are the characters? How can we activate this on multiple levels? And so that's the dial. And then we have multiple other things we want to do with this franchise that is, there's the feature film, but we also have a YA novel and a YouTube series. And I would love to continue to work on this game because I love it so much. And make it better and like extend it and see what else there is to tell within this like story of emotional realities for boys. Did I say it?
That's
Mr.
great.
Co-founder president. He knows the answer.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, cool. So anyone have any questions? You raise your hand. Anyone?
Or thoughts or observations.
Yeah.
Because also the thing we didn't say is we're freaking new to gaming. So we got a panel to talk about things we learned, but if you guys have things we should know that you want to tell us, go for it too.
Yeah, do you want to just shout out?
We had consultation from Roblox, but no, we didn't get them to help us build the game. That was really, Equimundo was our like beautiful angel funder that came through to help the game come alive.
And the Roblox education team really did help, and we would review the project with them throughout, and they gave us some really good guidance throughout. All right, anyone else? Yeah, go.
I love that. That's a great question. If you guys didn't hear, it's like, how do you make sure that you're being honest about your lofty ambitions? It seems like, and then permission to feel. It's funny. I think part of that is being around the boy. Part of it that I feel I feel confident we did it in a certain way, and I think it's because I did 16 rounds of really pretty intimate live conversations with boys, and they talked to me about where they felt things they learned about that feeling, and what they learned from our game that they could use in that moment. And they're not like, definitely we're not like psychotherapy, for sure, right? But I feel really strong in this, again, back to my brother, maybe my husband, my former co-director, who's not Todd, but I feel like men are not raised with permission to have any conversations. They are not raised to see themselves as feeling beings, or there's only one feeling they get, which is anger. And so I feel like those are, for me, and this is, the luck of saying, whatever, I'm gonna buy my plane tickets to go to all these different states and set up sessions. It helped me to see like, okay, well, we're going somewhere. And then I think from this, like, we're definitely trying to develop a better way to collect data. That's, that we don't have to do it better, for sure, but also to collect that data. But and maybe I just do this with films too, I have this thing where I'm like, you always feel like shit about something you made. I don't know, I always do. I always feel like it's like when I have to QC something alone in a theater, all I see are the mistakes. All I see are the failures. Because nothing is as good as you want it to be, right? Like, it is a piece of shit. And then you put it in front of your audience, and the first laugh is like, and then they come tell you what you did. And so maybe that is what kept driving me out there to play this game with kids, because I was like, no, it's not perfect for sure, but did it do anything? And I'm like, okay, it did. So
Just to add, I mean, really kind of what we're talking about here is culture shift. And, you know, in the entertainment world, it's a culture maker thinking, right? And you're not necessarily measuring anything other than, you know, is it in the dialogue? You could scrape chats in the internet. Like, you could see if there's a shift in different adjectives and whatever. But like, it's a large scale play, right? So one thing is to just talk about that when you're playing when you're playing in that space, you kind of just have to acknowledge that you're not going to be able to measure all of it, and you have to, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about our theory of change. And so to say, okay, we're not going to be able to, because you can't measure all of it, but you have a theory, and if it holds true, we're going to get this result, right? And so you act on that, and you do see results, but even though you can't measure them. The other thing I do want to just say is about the goal being, the eventual goal being personal agency. And so the idea that the kid who's playing the game and watching the film can come away with the understanding and the realization that they do have personal agency and they can take charge of their own lives. If we can unlock that piece, you were just saying you're struggling with like, what's the goal, or how do you know what you're, that if we can just get that, then particularly dealing with the climate anxiety going forward and bullying and where we have right now, the story that we have right now, that can unlock so much more wellness, you know. So just wanted to add that point as a goal, is that concept of agency. Yeah.
Rachel, you good? Okay. All right. I think we've
There was one more
exhausted our time.
here. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're
wrap it up.
going to wrap it up. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for the panelists. We're all around. If you want to talk more, we'd love to talk to you. Maybe work together. All the above.
We like to meet people. We need to know more people in this realm. So if you guys
Yeah.
are like,
Thanks for coming.
come talk.
Thank you.
And we have, they cut me off. We have a report that we are doing on this sort of like what we learned and how through our live thing. So if you write us at hello at Ryzo.studio, and then just say, send me the report. I will also send you the video we were going to play today. Ha!